Marcel Mauss was a French sociologist, the nephew of Émile Durkheim. Mauss's academic work traversed the boundaries between sociology and anthropology. Today, he is perhaps better recognized for his influence on the latter discipline, particularly with respect to his analyses of topics such as magic, sacrifice and gift exchange in different cultures around the world. Mauss had a significant influence upon Claude Lévi-Strauss, the founder of structural anthropology. His most famous book is The Gift. Background: Mauss was born in Épinal, Vosges to a Jewish family, and studied philosophy at Bordeaux, where his maternal uncle Émile Durkheim was teaching at the time. He passed the agrégation in 1893. He was also first cousin of the much younger Claudette Bloch, a marine biologist and mother of Maurice Bloch, who became a noted anthropologist. Instead of taking the usual route of teaching at a lycée following college, Mauss moved to Paris and took up the study of comparative religion and Sanskrit. His first publication in 1896 marked the beginning of a prolific career that would produce several landmarks in the sociological literature. Like many members of ANNEAQT sociology, Mauss was attracted to socialism, particularly that espoused by Jean Jaurès. He was particularly active in the events of the Dreyfus Affair. Towards the end of the century, he helped head at such left-wing papers as La Populaire, Humanité and Le Mouvement Socialiste, the last in collaboration with Georges Sorel. In 1901, Mauss took up a chair in the History of Religion and Uncivilized Peoples at the École Pratique des Hautes Études, one of the grandes écoles in Paris. The years of World War I were absolutely devastating for Mauss. Many of his friends and colleagues died in the war, and his uncle Durkheim died shortly before its end. Politically, the post-war years were also difficult for Mauss. Durkheim had made changes to school curricula across France, and after his death a backlash against his students began. Like many other followers of Durkheim, Mauss took refuge in administration. He secured Durkheim's legacy by founding institutions to carry out directions of research, such as l'Institut Français de Sociologie and l'Institut d'Ethnologie in 1926. Among students he influenced was Georges Devereux, later an influential anthropologist who combined ethnology with psychoanalysis. In 1931, Mauss took up the chair of sociology at the Collège de France. He actively fought against anti-Semitism and racial politics both before and after World War II. He died in 1950. Theoretical views. In his classic work The Gift, Mauss argued that gifts are never free. Rather, human history is full of examples of gifts giving rise to reciprocal exchange. The famous question that drove his inquiry into the anthropology of the gift was, what power resides in the object given that causes its recipient to pay it back? The answer is simple. The gift is of total prestation, imbued with spiritual mechanisms. Engaging the honor of both giver and receiver was coined by his student Maurice Lienhardt after Durkheim's social fact. Such transactions transcend the divisions between the spiritual and the material in a way that, according to Mauss, is almost magical. The giver does not merely give an object but also part of himself, for the object is indissolubly tied to the giver. The objects are never completely separated from the men who exchange them. Because of this bond between giver and gift, the act of giving creates a social bond with an obligation to reciprocate on the part of the recipient. Not to reciprocate means to lose honor and status, but the spiritual implications can be even worse. In Polynesia, failure to reciprocate means to lose mana, one's spiritual source of authority and wealth. Mauss distinguished between three obligations: giving, the necessary initial step for the creation and maintenance of social relationships; receiving, For to refuse to receive is to reject the social bond, and reciprocating in order to demonstrate one's own liberality, honor and wealth. An important notion in Mauss' conceptualization of gift exchange is what Gregory refers to as inalienability. In a commodity economy, there is a strong distinction between objects and persons through the notion of private property. Objects are sold, meaning that the ownership rights are fully transferred to the new owner. The object has thereby become alienated from its original owner. In a gift economy, however, the objects that are given are unalienated from the givers. They are loaned rather than sold and ceded. It is the fact that the identity of the giver is invariably bound up with the object given that causes the gift to have a power which compels the recipient to reciprocate. Because gifts are inalienable, they must be returned. The act of giving creates a gift debt that has to be repaid. Because of this, the notion of an expected return of the gift creates a relationship over time between two individuals. In other words, through gift-giving, a social bond evolves that is assumed to continue through space and time until the future moment of exchange. Gift exchange therefore leads to a mutual interdependence between giver and receiver. According to Mauss, the free gift that is not returned is a contradiction because it cannot create social ties. Following the Durkheimian quest for understanding social cohesion through the concept of solidarity, Mauss's argument is that solidarity is achieved through the social bonds created by gift exchange. Mauss emphasizes that exchanging resulted from the will of attaching other people to put people under obligations. Because, in theory, such gifts are voluntary, but in fact they are given and repaid under obligation. Critiques. Mauss's views on the nature of gift exchange have had critics. French anthropologist Alain Testart, for example, argues that there are free gifts, such as passes by giving money to beggars, e.g., in a large Western city. Donor and receiver do not know each other and are unlikely ever to meet again. In this context, the donation certainly creates no obligation on the side of the beggar to reciprocate. Neither the donor nor the beggar have such an expectation. Testart argues that only the latter can actually be enforced. He feels that Mauss overstated the magnitude of the obligation created by social pressures, particularly in his description of the potlatch amongst North American Indians. Another example of a non-reciprocal, free gift is provided by British anthropologist James Laidlaw. He describes the social context of Indian Jain renounces, a group of itinerant celibate renounces living an ascetic life of spiritual purification and salvation. The Jainist interpretation of the doctrine of ahimsa influences the diet of Jain renounces and compels them to avoid preparing food, as this could potentially involve violence against microscopic organisms. Since Jain renounces do not work, they rely on food donations from lay families within the Jain community. However, the former must not appear to be having any wants or desires, and only very hesitantly and apologetically receive the food prepared by the latter. Free gifts therefore challenge the aspects of the Maussian notion of the gift unless the moral and non-material qualities of gifting are considered. These aspects are, of course, at the heart of the gift, as demonstrated in books such as Annette Weiner's Inalienable Possessions. The paradox of keeping while giving. However, Mauss offers one possible response to such criticisms in the section, Note on Alms, Legacy. While Mauss is known for several of his own works, most notably his masterpiece Essai sur la Donne, much of his best work was done in collaboration with members of the ANNEAQT Sociologium, including Durkheim, Henry Hubert, Paul Fauconnet and others. Like many prominent French academics, Mauss did not train a great number of students. Many anthropologists claim to have followed in his footsteps, most notably Claude Lévi-Strauss. The essay on the gift is the origin for anthropological studies of reciprocity. His analysis of the potlatch has inspired Georges Bataille, then the Situationists, This term has been used by many interested in gift economies and open-source software, although this latter use sometimes differs from Mauss' original formulation. See also Lewis Hyde's revolutionary critique of Mauss in Imagination and the Erotic Life of Property. Bibliography by Mauss. Essai sur la nature et la fonction du sacrifice, 1898. La sociologie. Objet et méthode, 1901. De quelques formes primitives de classification, 1902. Esquisse d'un théorie générale de la magie, 1902. Essai sur le don, 1924. Les techniques du corps, 1934. Journal de Psychologie 32. Reprinted in Mauss, Sociology et Anthropologie, 1936, Paris. Puf. Sociology et Anthropologie, 1950. Manuel d'Ethnographie. 1967. Editions Payot and Rivages.